This conference will now be recorded.
All right. We would like to welcome you all out to tonight's Harriman City Planning Commission for Wednesday, October 18th. We appreciate everybody being here tonight, and we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. We'll begin with a Pledge of Allegiance, which will be led by Raylene Terry. If you could just come forward and lead us in that, that'd be great.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Raylene. We do have a full quorum today. I appreciate everybody being here. We'll move on to item 3.3, which is a discussion of conflicts of interest for the night.
Chair, I wanted to just point out that I live near the discussion we'll have for 5.1, but I have no conflicts whatsoever. So.
Okay. Thank you for that. Any other thoughts?
Just a quick one on
Yes.
item, let's see, I think it was 5 point, on the pickleball courts. Was that one 5.2?
The indoor.
Yeah, 5.2. I'm working on a project near that, but not on that. So.
Okay.
But I don't feel that it's a conflict of interest.
Very good. All right. Okay, no other thoughts on conflicts of interest? All right, we'll go ahead and move on to item 3.4, which is approval of the minutes for our September 20th, 2023 Planning Commission meeting. Do we have a motion for that?
I'll make a motion to approve item 3.4.
Do we have a motion by Heather? Do we have a second?
No, second.
Second by Forrest. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Those minutes are approved. We'll go ahead and move on to item 4.1, which is a consideration of a conditional use permit for a new wireless community facility. Maybe before we do that, I do have a few items. This is not up for a public hearing, but before we get into some items here tonight, I do want to read the public hearing comment, or the public comment policy and procedure for those of you that will be here tonight providing that for us. The purpose of public comment is to allow citizens to address items on the agenda. Citizens requesting to address the commission will be asked to complete a written comment form and present it to the deputy city recorder. In general, the chair will allow an individual 3 minutes to address the commission. A spokesperson recognized as representing a group in attendance may be allowed up to 5 minutes. This policy also applies to all public hearings. And with that, we'll go ahead. This item is not on for a public hearing, but I just wanted to bring that to your attention at this point. Clint, go ahead.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Make sure this is on. Okay. So this is an item that we have we've heard a couple of times. Well, it was on the agenda a couple of times. It's for a wireless facility or wireless monopole. There's a vicinity map showing where this is located. Closer view. This is on Harriman Main Street, a little further out west. It's located on this lot here, this large central lot. There's some better. We'll get to some other maps to show where that is going to be located. So, from the June 7th meeting, there was a couple of things that the commission wanted to see in terms of additional renderings. What else could be done with the property if this was located there? And what it might look like with the other transmission lines. So working with the applicant, a lot of that information has been provided, and so we'll kind of go through what they have provided for you, and you can make your recommendation. So this is the view from the street. As you can see that yellow and red dot back there, that's where the monopole will be located. It is on an area that kind of falls off from the street just a little bit. And here's another view of where that monopole would sit. There is a resident just to the east of the proposed site. So the proposal from the applicant is to construct a 100-foot tall cell tower with an enclosure on the base, which would be 50 by 50. The 100-foot tall tower would allow for a co-location site in the future. And these are just some of the plans. Some of the vantage points here. So as you see in the larger picture here to the right, that's the rendering of what a 100-foot tall monopole would look like. And as you look towards the base, the applicant has proposed a fencing that we're not recommending. So staff is recommending a masonry fence all the way around that facility. So you wouldn't see a lot of the equipment and stuff on the ground from the street, or if development takes place in front of that, they would screen that as well. And here's some other renderings. So what kind of development could take place if there was perhaps a gas station? This is what it would kind of look and feel like there. So there is ample room still for development to take place with the monopole construction. This is another rendering. So this is something that the commission wanted to see, was additional types of renderings. This is a water tower. In the slide, it's stating that it's 100 feet tall. It's kind of hard to verify that from this angle, but that's kind of what they're presenting there. And I believe these were done by staff with our GIS team, just looking at the different heights of those monopoles. So this would be looking to the south, and you can see there's the three heights. So the water tower height, I believe that's at 70 feet. The one next to that is a 50-foot tall monopole, which is what the current ordinance allows for. Then you have the 100-foot monopole, and then a 70-foot tall monopole. Again, this is a different perspective. This would be looking east at the site. Those four different heights.
You say those power lines aren't out there now, are they?
I'm sorry?
Those power lines that you're seeing on that, are they out there now? I didn't think they had that.
Yeah, I think those ones are out there now. I think there's going to be an additional line running north and south there as well. Again, another rendering. This would be back behind some residential homes, looking to the kind of the northeast there. And again, looking west. And we can come back to these as well, so if you would like to see more. So in terms of proximity, this is 350 feet away from the monopole. You can see the existing home sits just a little bit further than that. As part of our conditional use considerations, we look at the risk of injury to people. The base station fencing, again, they're proposing a chain link with barbed wire. Current city ordinance doesn't allow chain link fencing anywhere in the city, so we're recommending a precast masonry wall all the way around that facility. The current ordinance allows for 50-foot height and then up to 100 feet with the Planning Commission approval. There is an option again for the stealth enclosure, which would be that water tower feature that we showed earlier. So that being said, in your packets you will have seen there's 4 recommendation options. The first one, and they're based off of the height of the monopole, right? So one is at a 100-foot tall, the other one is at a 70-foot tall. So basically the recommendation options are for 100-foot tall with a monopole, 100-foot tall with the water tower feature, and then 70-foot tall monopole, 70-foot tall water feature, or water tank feature. So if there are any questions, I'd be glad to answer what I can.
Clint, is the pond between the road and the tower, proposed tower, is that fixed? That's definitely where it's going to go and sized properly, or could that move?
Josh? I believe that stays? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
That's where it's going to stay.
And that could always, that could always be rerouted, or, something else could be figured out to accommodate that drainage in the future, but for now it's.
So if it's sized the way it's going to stay, then it won't interfere with the pole. But if as that area develops, they need more capacity and it's sized larger, you just work around the pole?
They'll just have to make different accommodations for that drainage. So if what's in place doesn't meet the needs of the drain, the systems that are being proposed, then they'll have to we've got an alternative option for drainage.
Okay, any other questions? For staff? Okay,
I believe the applicant is here to.
great. Yeah,
to
if the applicant's here, we'll go ahead and invite them to come forward. Are they here? Maybe they're not. I guess they're not. Okay, yes, Michael.
They asked for a dial-in connection.
Oh. Is there anybody online for us?
Oh, yeah, there's Jason Evans. He is online.
So we got Jason, is that what you said? Jason, can you hear us? Is there any?
I can hear you. Can you hear
Great.
me?
Yeah, we can hear you now as well. Thank you very much. Is there anything, hopefully you were able to hear the presentation by Clint on that, and just curious if you want to provide any additional information for us to consider.
Clint did a great job just kind of explaining out some of the details and the history of the project. So I'm more so here to answer your questions.
Okay.
I think we've gone through this for quite a few months now, and now we're just here to do what you guys asked us to do with some renderings, and just to take some feedback and kind of talk through all the different scenarios and kind of speak to which ones work best and which ones, you guys feel it would be a better solution for this project.
All right. Well, thank you. Is there any questions then for the applicant, since we have them online?
I have one.
Go ahead.
It was Jason, correct? Jason, none of us here are expert in cell towers. However, we all have an opinion on the height of the tower. Does the technology dictate a 100-foot tower, or is the tower 100 feet tall to help the developer cohabitate other users on the pole?
Commissioner, that's the exact reason why the proposed site is 100 feet, because what you're essentially wanting to do is you want to eliminate other towers in the future. So what you typically want to do is, if you have one structure that's tall enough to accommodate people in the future, you won't see a plethora of towers throughout the community. That also goes to the design, why we're proposing the monopole. There's the proposal there for the water tank, which looks cool, it looks neat, but it limits you to only 2 carriers. So 2 companies will only be able to fit within that design. So then that allows then that you're going to be seeing another application in the future for that facility. Although the monopole at 100 feet, I know that that's probably not everyone's favorite design, but at the same time, it limits the amount of towers you would need to see in the future in that area, as it would accommodate all of the existing carriers at this time.
That being said, how many carriers could go on a 100-foot pole then? If we're limited by 2, yeah, what's the?
Typically it's about 4. So, there's a multitude of smaller companies too that also apply to co-locate on here. So that's where we limit the space within that 50 by 50 compound as well, just to maximize the number of users that can go in there as well.
Is there some sort of a rule of thumb that the height equates to a particular radius of coverage? So if we shorten the pole, the radius decreases. I get that, but I don't know what the increments are. Could you help us understand that?
Well, on the height of the tower itself, each carrier is typically about 10 feet away from each other. So if just using the 100 foot as an example, AT&T's equipment would be at 95 feet, for example. The next carrier would be at 85, the next carrier at 75, and all the way down to 65. If you kind of get below that 65 height, most carriers feel at that time that they would require another structure, because about that below 50 feet and around, doesn't give them such a great coverage aspect from a width standpoint. So about 60 is about the lowest that you'll see a carrier typically try to install on a tower site. And it very well could go for a mile, it could go for 2 miles. When wireless first started, you would want the tallest tower you could and cover as much space as you possibly could cover. Well, that's kind of changed a little bit with data and technology and the way things are now. You have to have more and more sites throughout the community and down the streets and in urban areas, because everyone's on their phone all the time. phone, the data is the driving factor of that. So very well could be a mile, it could be 2 miles that it covers.
Is that it?
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
All right, thank you. We'll go ahead and now have some discussion as a planning commission. Any thoughts?
I just always have to say that I think we should go with stealth. This is one of our primary entrances. It is our Harriman Main Street. We've protected it. We've done special roadway construction projects for it. So to me, I think if anywhere it needs one, we need to dress it up a little more. And so I'm more in line with the stealth option with the water tower. As far as height, I am okay with whatever it makes sense to do, but I think we should still stay stealth. That's my opinion.
Well, and that's what we were talking about, is I don't know what makes sense to do there. I don't know the technology enough to understand how tall it needs to be. But I do know that, I don't know if I've ever seen a 100-foot tall water tower. I certainly haven't seen a 100-foot tall tree anywhere close to Harriman.
I don't think it should be a tree. But no, I agree with you. I just lean on more, I mean, we all know that the technology's changed so much already. I don't know that we should deviate. Who knows what tomorrow may bring, right? So I think we should try and make these, I actually think the stealth has actually made minimal impact where they are, and they actually look good. And so that's where I lean on the stealth.
Well, and he mentioned that with the stealth option, you can have 2 carriers. It does limit you, but that's okay. Then you need to have another tower somewhere else to accommodate 2 others, but.
And you may already
But-
have that limitation if
Exactly.
somebody wants to be higher than somebody else. Like, I don't know.
Right.
And I don't think any of us are in the cell phone business to pick which one is the better carrier, so.
Yeah.
And I'm
Exactly.
thinking, I like the staff recommendation of 70 feet, but I understand, according to the technology, that means there's a probability of additional poles. But at 70 feet, you could clad the pole and it'd be more acceptable to the public than a 100-foot tall tree or a 100-foot tall. In other words, I'd rather have 2 or 3 70-foot poles that we can clad and hide
Yeah.
than one pole that's super tall.
And when we originally in Harriman started talking about stealth, that's exactly why we brought it up, is because when you start getting these multiple carriers down, you can see the large amount of antennas on that pole. And
That
so
itself is
It
not-
does kind of create its own little Christmas tree looking object, just nothing green or anything like that, right? So that's when we actually started stealth discussion.
So again, getting back to the city, they showed the 4 alternative recommendations that we could look at. I don't know if that's one of the ones, right? 2 alternatives for monopole height of 100 feet, one with stealth, one without, or monopole height of 70 feet with or without the stealth as well. But
So I'm
there could be a recommendation, we don't care the height, just
I'm
do
gonna
stealth.
I'm gonna disagree a little bit, Adam. Good. I think the water tower, it might be stealthy in other communities, but when you've got a water tower next to high power lines, it's gonna stand out more than if it's just a monopole. The monopole's gonna look more like the lines that are being installed, or the high power lines. So I think we are more stealthy to go with a monopole than a water tower. So that's where I'm at.
No, and I guess that was kind of my question earlier, because I didn't think we had those taller power poles right there along
No,
Main Street.
they're only about 40 feet.
Right, but they're not the,
The existing.
and
This
that's
is
the
the
wood poles.
existing.
Yeah, that's the existing wood poles. Is there planned for those taller poles that were shown in the renderings that was presented? Right. Because I kind of agree with Jackson. If you're going to have some taller power poles, utility poles out there,
We have the high voltage utility poles.
Yeah.
I think a monopole.
a monopole would blend in more. I would agree with
And
that.
I didn't
I just
know-
don't know what the plans are for that.
To me,
the
I
utilities
just
there.
assumed since they're all going down 6,400, that's where the high voltage is running. Because they're already in on fairly substantial lines there. So I know Rocky Mountain Power can put their power lines wherever they want, so that's a different, I don't think any of us will know what that future looks like, so.
Well, I guess that's my point, is there plans now, though? If there's plans, because staff was showing that, I didn't know, is there plans for that
Yeah, is.
Right now.
That's a good point. Is there an actual
So I
plan,
guess
or is that?
that's a question to Clint.
Yeah. And we're putting them on the spot too, maybe, so.
I know this is a topic that Blake, our community development director, has been coordinating with the power company. And I'm not sure that even Josh really knows what those plans are right now.
Okay.
Closer?
Closer.
Oh,
To
okay.
hear you. Never heard that from Adam.
I've never heard that from me either. Oh, I see.
So I lean towards monopole. That's where I'm at.
I this may be the only time, but I agree with Adam.
Holy cow.
No, I'm just kidding. I mean, I actually like the idea of doing the stealth. There are plenty of water towers that are, 100-foot tall, not here in Harriman and in Utah, but out east, they range 100, 120. But I would make it look more of a modern water tower and not something that came out of the 1880s, which I think was shown in the rendering, just because that's not realistic. But I'm a fan of the stealth version.
Me too, me too.
Well, I guess for me, if it's going to be 100 feet, I'd just soon it be a plain monopole. If it's shorter, then we can clad it with something.
Yeah.
I just want to offer my opinion. While approving 100 feet, we can be told or informed that it could help reduce the number of poles, like was kind of alluded to. It could just mean that the competitor wants another pole nearby that can compete with the higher height. So it doesn't necessarily mean fewer poles down the road. Frankly, they could try to put 15 poles all around it, and there would be nothing to stop anybody from doing that. So to just go on the assumption that putting in a higher pole means it's preventing poles down the road, I just don't see that as being factual.
Michael, do you have a comment?
Just so that the commission is aware, just in general, and I mentioned this in the work meeting, in trying to identify sites that are eligible for a wireless communications facility, a tower, a monopole, there are relatively few locations that would qualify. It has to be on a quasi-public property, so like a school site, or in this case, property that's owned by the city. Obviously, it's a conditional use, and there are also other distance requirements, but that quasi-public land use requirement really has been challenging for the wireless telecommunications industry to identify sites in the city. I'm not saying that that's bad public policy. I'm just saying it's not easy to find the next site. They're really challenging under our current standards. Now, maybe if we continue to favor stealth installations like we've done in the past, maybe it makes good public policy if we do believe that having coverage is desirable. That's something that we want as a community. Maybe we need to look at expanding potential sites for future installations. Again, these are not easy to get.
Is there
in Harriman.
Is there anything in the current city standards that would prohibit a second pole on this site, on this particular site?
No.
Could somebody else come in and you'd have a second one right here too?
I think there's a separation requirement, but I'd have to double check the
Yeah.
standard.
Yeah, just curious that way too. If this is the,
Separation to the road, but.
yeah.
And is this monopole, and maybe this is a question for the client, is this monopole adaptable for future technology, whether it's 5G or 6G, or is that an adaptation that's going to happen in the future?
Typically, the way we have administrated technological changes over time is if it's not increasing essentially the height or the bulk that had been previously approved, we can do that administratively. We already know that we require a co-location. So if we had a co-locator come, we would not need to go through this public process because we've already required that, we anticipated that. And yes, as maybe new antenna arrays are designed, if they kind of fit within the envelope of what we had previously established. Conditional use permits, as you know, run with the land. And So, yeah, there is an opportunity to adjust according to technology.
And that's why I really like the Stealth, is you kind of get what you get the finished product, and then nobody cares what's underneath the Stealth. And so the community knows what you have. So that's why I lean on Stealth. So the height, honestly, I don't personally care. If they want to go higher, I don't personally care if it's 100 feet or 70. But to me, it's more just about trying to make it a little more attractive when you come to the Harriman Towers. I think they should just be more stealth.
Adam, I think it was you that mentioned that road is going to be one of the main drags coming into Harriman.
Yeah.
If all that is city property, can't we tuck it back into that far back corner?
This is a little bit difficult because I know that the city attorney's office and our community development director has been coordinating a potential contract that the city would execute. And so from those two kind of roles of responsibility, they, acting on behalf of the city, have basically agreed to potentially, that current location. So would the city be open to relocating that, the monopole site? I don't know.
But wouldn't we have to,
It drops
wouldn't
down.
that go,
doesn't it?
wouldn't that change to non-quasi-public?
Well, presuming you were still talking about the property that's owned
Keeping
by
it
the
on the
city,
same property,
right?
just put it
Yeah, the
further
city
away.
property.
But further
Same
back,
person.
it drops down significantly.
Yeah,
And so you'd
at
have
the top.
to,
So now we're talking 150-foot pole instead.
right.
So when we first discussed this, I know one of our concerns was if this would limit what else the property could be used for? Do we have a use in mind, or not at this point? Does it limit what can go on
Yeah,
the
the
site?
Detention pond, so.
I noticed that it said maybe neighborhood commercial, it could be rezoned to neighborhood commercial. What kind of uses are those again?
So neighborhood commercial are going to be,
Professional services.
And staff doesn't feel like that, where the location is, would limit putting something else on the property?
now, one of the things that the FCC way, so I don't think that there's.
I meant more like buildable, okay.
It seems feasible, right, to use the rest of the site for some other.
But we officially have not made that determination to vacate that land, right? I mean, right now, it's still,
Still be the city.
it's still city.
Yeah.
That's a future discussion, right, in reality?
The chunk of property taken out by the monopole.
Which is why the city, through negotiations with the city on locating it.
and is that a leasing
Allowing that
agreement
to continue.
with the city? Or is that a sale? Is it a
lease.
leasing?
Probably a lease. Likely a lease, yeah. Okay, is there any other thoughts? Anybody else wants to share any information?
I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay, Adam, go ahead.
I move to approve item 4.1 with staff's recommendations with an altering of number 4 to allow for up to 100 feet, and an alteration number 5 to require stealth design of a water tank.
So just to clarify, I think the way this was drafted, and I apologize, you have a motion.
No,
Maybe I should
that's
wait
the
for a
problem, is I'm
second.
confused.
Yeah, it was kind of
That
like
height
an
one.
option, like if you're going to do a monopole, this was staff's recommendation was number 4.
Okay.
Well, I think it
But
was
if you're going to
good.
do.
I'm trying to allow up to 100 even if it is a water tank.
Okay.
Right.
That's what I'm trying to say. That's why I altered 4 and 5.
Okay.
Yeah. We have a motion by Adam.
I'll second.
We have a second by Forrest. We'll go ahead and do a roll call vote. Forrest,
Yes.
Adam,
Yes.
Jackson,
No.
Heather,
No.
Daryl,
No.
Andrea?
Yes.
It's a tie. This is the first time this has ever happened. We have 3 noes and 3 yeses, so I get to cast the deciding vote, and I will vote yes for that item. So that item passes with a 4-3 vote. All right, we will go ahead.
There, we're not approving a monopole, we're requiring the
We are
stealth.
requiring a stealth.
Okay.
Stealth.
They can, up to 100.
Stealth up to 100 feet.
Okay. Man, you guys made me nervous there. Good job. All right, we'll move on to item 4.2. Clint, we have this one as well.
So this is another development taking place in the Anthem commercial area. Typically, as we've seen development take place here, they have these larger parcels, and they'll have somebody come in that wants to piece off of the parcel, and then they'll split that off and create their own parcel so that they can develop that, and so on and so forth. And so this is, we'll see this same parcel again tonight in the next presentation. But this is to split the lot, the existing lot here, into 2 parcels for future development of a pickleball recreational facility. So the lotting that's being subdivided is on the west side, and then the remnant piece will be on the east side. In terms of engineering and planning, we have no concerns. It meets all the standards of the zone, so should be a pretty simple consideration. But if there's any questions, I'm glad to answer what I can.
Any questions for Clint? Okay, thank you. If the applicant's here, don't know if the applicant's here, you want to come forward and provide any additional information? If not, you're good. Okay. This is open, or on the agenda for a public hearing. So again, we have public hearing for multiple items tonight. Just want to make it clear that we're going to do a public hearing just for this particular item. There'll be opportunities for the other items coming up. So if there are any comments from the public, we'll go ahead and open up the public hearing at this time, and you can come on up and provide any comments on this particular item. Okay, seeing none, I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Online.
I don't think we received anything online either, for this item, no.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
We have a motion by Forrest,
Second.
second by Heather. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, that public hearing is closed. Any discussion from the commission or a motion?
No, I'd like to make a motion to approve item 4.2.
All right, we have a motion by Adam,
Second?
second by Jackson. Call for a vote. Andrea?
Yes.
Daryl?
Yes.
Heather?
Yes.
Jackson?
Yes.
Adam?
Yes.
And Forrest?
Yes.
All right, that item passes. Thank you. We'll move on to item 4.3.
Okay, so as promised, this is the site plan for that lot that was just approved. So again, here's this, you can see the site plan, kind of the layout overlaid onto the aerial photo. Parking mostly to the west of the building, and then the building on the east side. There are 10 indoor pickleball courts, and then about 3 out that are outside. That's the lot that was just reviewed and approved. And so the structure is about 28,000 square feet. It's about just over 28 feet tall. They're proposing 62 parking stalls. And then you can see the land uses there. This is the office portion. That's the indoor pickleball, and then that's outdoor pickleball. So the building will be constructed out of brick, hardy panel, siding, metal paneling, and then a clear anodized storefront. All the materials that are proposing are approvable within the MDA that it's in, the Anthem Commercial. They do have a letter from Anthem Commercial approving the elevations as well. This is the landscape plan that's being proposed. There is some consideration, I think, on that we'll get back to. I'll show that again just so you can take a longer look at it if you want. just everything that's being shown falls within our water efficient designs. I think there's a consideration for 50% live growth coverage that we'll address here in a minute. So in terms of things that we consider, we're looking at zoning and engineering. One of the first things we're looking at, or the applicant is requesting, is for a reduction in parking stalls. So by city standards, they would be required to install 88. With a parking study that's been provided, which staff is in agreement with, they're reducing that down to 55 stalls. One of the benefits of the area that they're developing in is there is a parking and egress easement over all of the Anthem commercial. So as other properties develop, there'll be additional spots for parking if and when this site is ever in need. As you can see, just on the west side of this site where the Slackwater restaurant is, if that ever has available parking, Slackwater people could come over to the pickleball site, or pickleball people could go to the Slackwater site, or you could park and play pickleball and go have something to eat. So this is the landscape portion that does not currently meet the 50% live growth coverage. So that's one of the requirements of, one of the conditions of approval is that they show a landscape plan that does meet those requirements. That being said, if there's any questions, I'm glad to answer what I can.
So item 2 on that is what we just approved, so.
Yep.
Yeah, just people to benefit. Thank you. Again, if the applicant wants to provide any additional information, come on up. Go ahead and state your name for us, please.
My name's Jamie McQueen. Appreciate you taking the time to consider this in your city.
Is there anything additional you'd like to provide to us, or city staff present well enough?
A couple
for you?
things I want to let you know is that pickleball is very popular right now. It is continuing to grow. Some of the things that I've investigated, because I do play pickleball, I do like the idea of changing a few things. So I've gone out of town. We found a court system, a floor system that is rubberized, that's about 1/4 of an inch to 3/8 inches thick. It doesn't affect the bounce of the ball or the play of the ball. It just takes the shock out of the human being, either in the ankles, the knees, and the hips. That isn't in any place that I can find in Utah. So that'll be new to this community. The other thing, we spent a great deal of time and effort on the HVAC. Most places don't have an air exchange system. Our place will have an air exchange system so that we get rid of 50% of the bad air during the day and regenerate it with fresh air. Most of the places you play indoor right now, it's not a regenerated air, it's just recirculated. And lastly, we're going to do what they call a direct lighting system. So as you play in some of these places, if you get an overhead shot, you look up and what you get is a face full of light in your eye, and then you can't see the ball. So we're doing a lot of investigation on this. We think it's really some nice research, some good facility, and we'd be excited to have this in your community if you folks like it. So thanks for your consideration.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions for the applicant?
I have a question.
Yes.
Just out of curiosity, that you got the 3 outdoor courts and then you have that 4th mini court. Is that just a different type of mini court, or what is that?
A lot of times in pickleball, your game is enhanced by being able to practice what they call the kitchen, or the shorter area, the soft game. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people will really just go and practice on the short game and not play the full game, but that's where a lot of your honed skills in the game of pickleball really come about, is in that kitchen area.
The
so
finesse.
That's what that is.
The finesse, not the power.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
The touch.
Yeah. Interesting. Good question. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Jamie. Appreciate you being here. Any comments, discussion from the commission?
Looks like it's well researched and planned.
Yeah. It meets all the standards of the development, so.
I think the only thing that comes to my mind is, if they ever do tournaments at these courts, I've been to other sports courts that are very similar, and you can't even plan for the number of parking spaces that are required. And so it's good that it's actually within this development and they'll be able to share with the other, the other uses.
Yeah, if you got the Winco nearby, you've got the development. It's not platted yet to the west as well, but, or excuse me, to the east, but, yeah. Is that a motion then?
Okay, I'll make a motion that we approve
4.3.
4.3 with the staff's recommendations.
All right, we have a motion by Forrest.
I'll second.
Second by Heather. She beat you. We'll call for vote. Forrest.
Yes.
Adam.
Yes.
Jackson.
Yes.
Heather.
Yes.
Darrell.
Yes.
And Andrea.
Yes.
Great, thank you. Welcome. Glad to have you. All right. We're going to go ahead and move on to our legislative items. Let's see. Yeah, we'll go ahead and move to item 5.1. Sorry, I was looking over these for a minute. We'll have item 5.1. Clint, it's Michael that's doing 5.1. So it's a consideration of a request to remove a zoning condition on lots 718, 752, 53, 54 of the Estates at Rose Creek subdivision.
Good evening again, and thank you for your work tonight. Our staff planner, Sheldon Howe, who wrote this report, is unable to be with us tonight, so I'm pinch hitting. As you know, we discussed this in the work meeting, but I will present this item and then following any discussion the council or commission may have. As you know, this is a public hearing.
Public hearing. All right.
And the applicant is here tonight to be able to also address your questions. So this is the proximity of the property that would be affected by amending the zoning condition. It's interesting to be thinking about this project because although we're amending the text that's relative to the zoning condition, it is essentially amending the zoning map. So this is our standard zoning map, but you can see that there's this cross-hatched area that is implying that we have an underlying zoning condition that's attached to this A110 zone on Carolyn Court off here to the right. So some background on this property, this subdivision. There was a rezone and a zoning condition that was approved for the subject property in March of 2002, so shortly after the city had incorporated. We rezoned it from C2 commercial to A1 agricultural because it didn't have sufficient frontage to really facilitate commercial development. And at the time, the city council required that lots along the north boundary of this area have a minimum 1/2 acre size. Now, I believe the staff report clarified that although later in our zoning codes, we began to codify this density bonus structure, where within the A110 zone, there's a base zone by right or associated with the zone type. And then based on certain development improvements or enhancements, there is an opportunity to increase the density upwards, which I think at that time was 2.7, if I remember right. But that was not the structure that created the zoning condition. So that happened later in our zoning codes, and then we've amended that even further. So this was purely a zoning condition requirement, not tied to plan development. In addition to the 1/2 acre minimum, it also has this overall maximum density of 2.7 units per acre. After the zoning amendment, we began approving phases of development. So phase 7 and 8 in March of 2002, you can see the lots, 7A, 7B, and phase 8. Again, the underlying zone would require a 10,000 square foot minimum. The project was initially started in the county, by the way, and then these were later phases that came in after we had incorporated as a city. So the applicant approached the city with this idea of, hey, I have an A110 zone. Minimum lot size is 10,000 square feet. We have some larger lots. Is there an opportunity to amend or to do a subdivision amendment? And of course, staff identified the fact that there is a zoning condition, and the zoning condition would limit the desired subdivision amendment, the amendment that the applicant had initially approached the city with. So they then began to talk about submitting this application before you tonight to modify that zoning condition. Not changing the 2.7 dwelling unit per acre, that would still remain under this current proposal, but removing that half-acre lot requirement. So this is, again, the area where that amendment would take place. The zoning condition would be amending for these particular lots. And then, as you know, each zoning amendment, we're looking at certain standards on our zoning code, how we measure whether or not this is conducive to established city policy or city standards. And so we're looking at, is this in harmony with the existing development? Does it have an adverse effect on adjacent properties? Those were addressed in your staff report. So let's looking more specifically, if this were approved, how would this zoning condition actually affect these particular properties? So based on the placement of the existing homes on lots 718 and 754, there would not be the ability to subdivide the properties and have the minimum acreage and lot frontage. So without doing, significant remodeling, demolitions, something or other, those two lots would not inherently be eligible for further subdivision, even if this zoning condition were approved, or this amendment would be approved. 753 is eligible. It could be subdivided without further modification to the existing home. 752 would allow it, but we'd have to either relocate the accessory structure, or we'd have to make a decision what to do there. So the location of the accessory structure would be essentially where we would anticipate seeing a new lot line. Maintaining the 2.7 dwelling unit requirement of the zoning condition, we're also saying on the staff level that we're really looking at the possibility of only having 2 additional lots in the subdivision. Not all 4 properties could have a lot split and maintain that 2.7 maximum. We'd go over the 2.7 maximum. So really the impact would be potentially 2 additional lots. So as you know, the courts have given cities a fair amount of discretion when it comes to identifying your general plan, what are your community values, and then effecting or implementing your general plan through the zoning ordinance. The zoning ordinance is the rules for development. Maintaining the existing zoning condition is certainly an appropriate option for the commission and the council to consider. There's nothing wrong with saying those rules that are currently established should be maintained. You have that discretion, the council would have that discretion. It is not incompliant with the existing zone. But in seeking an amendment on the staff level, we were looking at some of the broader objectives of our current general plan. And the idea of introducing compatible land uses that would further contribute to the city's tax base, the city's housing, in a way that would not, would reasonably not affect or impact our transportation system, the quality of life. It just seemed like it would meet those broader objectives that were identified in the general plan that were quoted, I think, on page 3 of your staff report. So with that said, the staff recommendation was to recommend approval of the text amendment maintaining the 2.7 dwelling units per acre. All the underlying zoning standards would still be required. It'd still have to be half acre. You'd still have to have the minimum lot width. All the access, you know, that we typically require of any other property in that zone would also be required. So again, this is really exercise in what do you believe as a planning commission in making a recommendation to the city council. It's really is an expression of what are our goals and objectives of the city as expressed by the general plan. If you believe that maintaining the current zoning condition, that is certainly an appropriate recommendation that the commission, I think, can make. We're looking at that broader context of what are the financial and kind of those qualitative impacts to the community. And we believe that this actually is consistent with those general plan objectives of the current general plan. So,
Okay.
Any questions for me at this time?
So I do have a question real quick, Mike. If, in the city's view, only 2 additional lots can be formed within those 5 lots, so if any other lot within this subdivision wanted to subdivide, that'd put it over the 2.7 units per acre. And so they'd have to change the,
You'd have to change that.
Density.
Yeah.
I do have one question, actually. I just popped in my mind, and it might not be for you, Mike, but since this was originally one phase of a subdivision, wouldn't they have to amend that entire subdivision and get every property owner in that subdivision to amend and sign off on that?
So the zoning condition, as you can see, is attached specifically geographically.
Correct. I mean, when it goes to
So they're
subdivision.
amending the application of that zoning condition to just those parcels.
Yes, but because this was an official approved subdivision by the city, this is a future challenge. I'm just trying to think, even if we adjust the ZC, won't the entire subdivision have to be amended? Because it's not a lot line adjustment, it's a recreation. And it won't just be those 4 or 5 lots. It would have to be the original just curious.
No. Yeah, you can take, so let's say there's a 30-lot subdivision, and you're amending, and we do this often, you're amending maybe just 2 or 3 lots within that subdivision.
Okay.
You can just amend just those particular lots.
Oh, I didn't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Didn't know with a large subdivision like this. Okay.
You basically just vacate those 2 lots out of the existing subdivision and create a new subdivision.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like the last one, the 10th Amendment that we just did commercially. You were only amending one particular lot in that commercial development, not the entire subdivision for Anthem Commercial.
I knew you could with some commercial, but with other interests, I didn't know. So, okay.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Michael. The applicant is here. Yeah, if you'd like to provide any additional information, come forward. No? Any questions for the applicant then?
Nope.
Nope. Okay. All right. So this item is up for a public hearing. So again, just taking comments on this proposed action at this time. And just so for everybody's benefit as well, before I open the public hearing, just want to make sure everybody understands for legislative items, we make, as a commission, we make recommendations to the city council. Ultimately, it will be up to the city council for the final approval on this, but it is our responsibility to hold the public hearing, but then, and make a recommendation, and then it will go back to city council, and there'll be another opportunity for comments to them as well, and they will have the final say on the approval. So with that, I will go ahead and open up the public hearing at this time for this item. If there's anybody who'd like to make a comment, please come forward. We didn't have any online either. Okay. Seeing no comments, I'll go ahead and entertain a motion for closing the public hearing.
I move to close the public hearing.
Okay, have a motion by Adam.
Second.
Second by Jackson. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Public hearing is now closed. Any discussion from Planning Commission at this time?
So One of the reasons why, obviously, the tools that we have now, we didn't have then. One of the tools that they did a zoning condition on this property is to buffer the property to the north, so the half acres. And if you remember, there's another subdivision that we did the exact same thing in. I can't remember its subdivision's name. Do you remember it, Preston, by chance?
Was it Sky?
Yeah, that one.
My subdivision?
Yes.
Well, I know what the original name was.
What was it?
Freeman Farms.
Yeah.
But then they changed it.
I just can't remember the.
I can't even remember what it was now.
Anyway, that one, right around the corner, we did the exact same thing of buffering. We also have the ongoing dilemma that we always are driving for bigger lots, which this is doing the exact opposite. And to me, I don't see it being really a improvement or enhancement. To me, honestly, if we do this, I think we're going to see this everywhere as we look at buffering and things like that. So I feel like I think the Planning Commission, and I'll thank the Planning Commissioner, because one of those Planning Commissioners is in this room right now, that was on the Planning Commission for almost 20 years, was here during that discussion, and that is why they did the zoning condition, and I think we should uphold it. So I actually kind of lean on not approving this and recommending it for denial because of that. I don't want to make a motion just yet because I want to hear if anybody else.
No,
has
that's just what I was going to say.
something,
We understand
but
Adam.
I just
point of
want
view.
to
Yeah.
say that because that is why we did the buffer, and we did the same thing for the new name of Freeman Farms, and we did the same thing on 7300, and I mean that's what we've been doing a lot.
Yeah, we've been doing a lot, having that buffer.
Sky Ranch? Or
Yeah.
Is it Sky Ranch?
I can't
Sky
remember.
Meadows or something?
Sky.
Something.
No, it wasn't that.
I don't know. I
Anyhow,
drive by it all
we
the
all know
time,
where-
but I
we
don't
all know
remember
where
that.
it's
I cannot remember
It's
what it
just
was.
west of
The
it.
Freeman
know where you
land that
live.
was up above.
Yeah. All right, any other thoughts, discussion items from anybody else?
I feel the same way. It's really important to me to protect what was already there. And there was an intent to have that with that zoning condition. So for me, I prefer and lean towards protecting those.
I lean towards approving it because I think that, everything changes, and to assume that everything's going to stay the same from the initial zoning, I think is a mistake. We are trying to get more housing stock that's reasonable, that's not townhouses or apartments, and this is a great kind of example of infill and how it can be accomplished.
I got a question maybe for staff. What is the zoning on the area just above this to the north? Just curious if that's,
Yeah, I don't know that our.
because if we have a buffer.
You actually had it on one of your maps right there.
Yeah, there we go.
Oh, there it is.
Half acres.
It's half acre there. Okay. Well, yeah. Which why you probably had that zoning condition, exactly.
Exactly.
From the half acre.
It's zoned half acre, but those are obviously much larger than a single half.
Sure, they could still
Those
come back
ones
though.
aren't, but the ones all the way up
Yeah.
from that point all the way forward.
So those ones could subdivide.
Those two could to half acres.
Yeah.
Probably to 4.
No, just a 2. They're 1 acre lots, right?
Yeah, likely. If you look at yeah. Yeah, I was just curious because again, right, the buffer that we want to provide and the transition from one zone
I
to the
just
other.
know the people along that street, and they're mostly halves from after that point above, off the picture.
Any other thoughts, discussion?
I have a thought to put out there. It was Mirabella was the name of the development, by the way.
Yes, you're right. Mirabella. Good job.
No, one thought is now that it's just really a thought to throw out there for consideration. The city hasn't approved any sort of accessory dwelling unit decision, but I do know it's on everybody's mind. Not approving such a split like this could just essentially result in going around the rules in the future by just building an accessory dwelling unit, which then in turn becomes the same essential thing without a second landowner. Whether or not that moves a person to think that they like that or not, I don't know. Just something of a thought that came to my mind.
And I think you're gonna have that even on the quarter acres across the street.
Agreed.
So that's where I think we still stick with it.
And then you
let
could have
people
4 on- instead of
land
2.
rights to do what they want to do with their property. So I actually like that even more.
And I know the
It cuts
commission.
both ways.
I know the commission is aware of this, and you're already thinking ahead, but just for the public record and for those who are participating tonight, we currently do not have a detached accessory dwelling unit standard. It is something that we are exploring. We've had a couple of work meetings with the Planning Commission on that. So, yeah, currently, we would not issue a permit for a detached structure. But that does kind of go to what is the public policy that we're really trying to achieve in order, by either agreeing to make a recommendation to amend this or to maintain it. I think from my perspective, from all of the research and the things that I'm looking at, I'm constantly hearing about the difficulties of maintaining our existing kind of standard of living. What are those opportunities that we have to increase revenues as a city, property values as a city, without causing harm to impacting our city negatively from an infrastructure point of view or traffic. This is a very light infill request. And every time you do something of this nature, you're essentially paying for the exact same infrastructure with more tax dollars coming in to pay for that service. That snow plow, that seal coat that's got to go on these projects, right? You have more money coming into the coffers that pay for those exact same amount of services. So it's something that's called thickening the city. It helps us on the bottom line without, at least in theory, impacting negatively the community. Now, to some individuals, maybe you're saying, no, we really believe that maintaining that buffer with the A121 zone, that is a good public policy. And again, I've made a statement. I think both choices are defensible.
Yeah.
I honestly believe that. I do tend to favor the idea, personally, I do tend to favor the idea of how can we find ways to essentially make paying for this community more doable and do it in ways that don't cause some of the negative impacts that we often see associated.
So Mike,
So this is like a reflection of kind of current planning policy or theory, like thickening the city in a ways without harming our larger objectives.
Mike, I actually agree with you,
Yeah.
except for I actually see that it would detriment the roadway of Carolyn Court because you have to actually cut into a road, degrade the life of that road for a sewer connection, which means that's not easy, a water connection, and all your other utilities. As well as I also look at the reason why they did the half-acre buffers at that point, and you already can see it on the far end because they have horses and corrals, is to allow for animal access, animal rights. And I know that those are dwindling in Utah, or in Harriman especially, but these are people that do have animals and animal rights, and so that's why, that's one of the reasons why the ZC, so.
So again, it's a policy decision, recommendation that you are going to make, so.
Okay.
So I'm ready to make a motion.
Any other discussion?
I appreciate Adam's comment about it setting a precedence. I think if this is something that in 10 years we're desperate for housing, then we could look at it then.
Any other thoughts? Again, this is a motion for a recommendation to city council. So this is not an approval. Go ahead.
I would like to make a motion to recommend to city council denial of this on the basis that it does not support the ongoing buffering that was currently, that was originally employed by the original planning commission, as well as that it would have possible detriments to both the roadways and other city infrastructure.
Okay, we have a motion by Adam
I'll second that.
and a second by Heather. Call for a vote. Andrea,
Yes.
Daryl,
Yes.
Heather?
Yes.
Jackson?
Yes.
Adam?
Yes.
Forrest?
No.
Okay, that moves forward as a recommendation for denial to the city council. And again, look for that on a upcoming city council
Thank you.
meeting. So, thank you. All right, we'll move on to item 5.2, but just real quick before Lauren begins, just want to make everybody aware, we have two items on this agenda, 5.2 and 5.3, that are similar, talking about the same parcel out there. The first item, 5.2, is to a request to amend the Harriman City General Plan, and item 5.3 is a request for a zoning change. So since they are the same property, we're going to do one presentation that'll talk about both items, but we will have two separate hearings, one for again for amending the general plan, and then another hearing to have a zoning map change recommendation as well. Again, these are recommendations to City Council. We'll do two separate hearings, two separate motions, but we'll have one presentation. Lauren, thank you.
All right, hi everyone. So we will be talking about the Parker General Plan Amendment and rezone. So we are located pretty centrally here in the city off of Rose Canyon Road. This is the property that we're looking at. And this is our current zoning map. Okay, so we're gonna go back to this one for a moment. So the interest with the general plan is to change this property to Neighborhood 1, and it will be going from agriculture and hillside into that Neighborhood 1. The reasoning that staff supports this is if you look at the east side or the right side of your screen, those 1 acre properties right there, as well as that whole A143 area, is already Neighborhood 1, as well as the Sky Ranch, Reserve at Sky Ranch? There we go. The A110 section that's on the left side of the screen. So changing the general plan would help these uses be a little bit more compatible as we're looking through the city. And then this is just the proposed subdivision by our applicant. And this is not exact, it's not final, but it's just to give you a general idea of the interest that's here. They do intend on keeping animal rights on all of the properties and holding on to that agricultural heritage, but making it a little bit more accessible to different groups of people. Any questions for me?
Any questions?
Okay, the applicant is also here if you have any questions for them as well.
All right. So yes, if the applicant's here, want to provide any additional information, please come forward. We'll give you an opportunity to come back and provide any additional information when we get to item 5.2 as well.
Okay.
But however you'd like to discuss it.
I'll state my name, I guess.
Yes, please.
Brandon Parker, and this is my wife, Anna Parker. And the whole idea behind this is our kids go to Harriman. They're in playoffs right now for football. Then we move on to wrestling and then rugby. So we are Harriman all the way through. We currently live in South Jordan, and this opportunity allows us in our little plot in Daybreak. Currently, we can't have animals. It's just, we want to be, I guess, quasi-farmers, or if that's okay to say. But that just doesn't allow us that. And in Harriman, we have to stay within Harriman boundaries. And this property, I can let my wife speak for this, is there is a heritage that the Butterfields have that is, there's a feeling when you go onto the property. Anyways, we want to live on this property as well. This is a subdivision that we wanted to do and allow for. I'm kind of going into probably 5.3 right now, but as you saw on the map, there's all the properties around it are zoned Neighborhood 1, excluding this little one here. And we'd hate to see it sit dormant and be a problem potentially for the city. And I don't know if you have any thoughts.
Covered it. Like he said, this is our dream, and we'd love to keep it all, but we can't afford it. And I also feel that what we're going to provide is this beautiful space for more families than just ours to live in this land that the Butterfields have nurtured for 70 or 80 years. Yeah, we do plan on having animals, and we'd love for our neighbors to also do the same. That's why if you look at the subdivision, we've tried to keep the lots as big as possible. So, yeah, that's.
Yep.
Yeah, so you can see the biggest lot in the corner is going to be ours. Our intent is to keep the orchard that is existing and put our home on the property as well.
And also the existing home, I know in the past, I think some other folks had wanted to take it down. This is a beautiful home to be remodeled and allow another family to move into it. So I think that some of my thoughts, I'm sure I could go into a diatribe and talk for a while. I'm pretty bad at that, but I think that covers it for me.
I think what he meant about letting the property just sit and become a potential problem, there are a lot of outbuildings on the property that we're going to be removing. Some will be taking down and moving on to our property. So that's more of an explanation of what he was getting at with that.
Great. Any questions for the applicant then? Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Again, right now.
Just think of one
Yeah,
question.
sorry, we do
One
have a
quick
question.
Sorry.
Sorry. Go ahead, Jackson.
And I don't know, and maybe this is a staff question as well, but is there a difference between large and small animals?
Yes.
Yes.
And I'm trying to remember what that was.
Half acre. Half acres, I like.
So over half acre, we can have large? Okay.
Yeah, so,
At certain quantities on up.
yeah, in our code, there are specific amounts of the different size animals that you can have depending on how large your lot is. And they would not be able to exceed those numbers.
I think basically it's about 2 horses on a half acre, and then it goes up from there.
All right. Thank you.
Kind of the starting
That was
point.
my question.
Yeah, thank you. All right, just, again, just to reiterate, we are going to have a public hearing at this time for item 5.2, which is the consideration of a request to amend the Harriman City General Plan future land use map for this parcel. And even though they did show a potential subdivision out there, that has not come before us yet for approval. We need to go through this process, so anything, that's a future thing, so I don't want people to get caught up on lot size or anything like that. Right now, we are just looking at hearing comments about a general plan and future land use map update. So with that, I will go ahead and open up the public hearing at this time for this item. And we did receive a comment. I think, was that 5.2 or maybe that was 5.3? I guess
5.2 and 5.3.
5.3. Okay, we'll wait for that one then. Okay, seeing no comment, I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Got a motion by Adam?
Second.
Second by Heather. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing at this time. Any discussion from the Planning Commission?
I
for
just
5.2?
had a quick question. What lot is the existing house on?
This corner.
It's on lot 5, yeah.
Okay, and then the applicant is proposing to build their house on lot 3, right?
On lot 3.
Okay, sounds good.
Could you go back to the original zoning?
There you go.
Yeah.
Kind of a flat lot for a hillside.
Yeah, the hillside doesn't make sense to me.
I was thinking the same thing. Strange.
So just so it's clear, this is an agricultural lot, but within our general plan, agricultural and hillside have become one type. So this is agricultural just in that larger category.
Not hearing any discussion.
Well, on the
Any thoughts one way or another about?
on the surface, I don't have too many issues with this, but I'm thinking the plan's only a year old. We don't have enough track record to know if there's any unintended consequences to changing this.
There's any thoughts?
So
I can't think of any right now.
Yeah.
but-
So I don't think it should say hillside, but I think it's okay to say agriculture residential. That's kind of where I'm struggling for this one. And that's where I don't know that neighborhood one's the right feel either. Now, what is Old Harriman? That's what I'm gonna ask. What would Old Harriman be deemed? That's not neighborhood, is that neighborhood one? Because if that's the case, then I'm kind of comfortable with this. Because that's kind of what I look at this land like, is this is kind of Old Harriman-ish is what I'll call it. That's why the house is so old.
Right.
So I kind of classify that this is Old Harriman, and I remember saying that when we did the original general plan, and it stopped about,
In this area.
it stops basically where the commercial is, because that's where Old Harriman kind of quit being that way. I know there's a lot of Hamiltons off of 134th, but Old Harriman was more this and down Main Street. And so I struggle truly saying neighborhood one, because to me it's almost like this is more like part of Old Harriman. And so there is flexibility there, and I think subdivisions do make sense there. I'm not trying to say that. But to truly call this,
So maybe,
to go
maybe
that,
I can,
to reach that far.
can add to that. So for me, I love what they're doing.
Agreed.
And so I think maybe it's just a question of, is this the right move to get them there?
Correct.
Okay.
And that's what I'm trying to say is there somewhere in between?
Is this the right language to get them what they're aiming for?
Because I think neighborhood one almost might be opening us too much, not for what they want, what they're saying they want, which I totally trust and expect. But I also want to make sure we're protected that you do rezone this and you decide to find your dream home somewhere else, and we are stuck with more of not what we're trying to achieve.
So to answer some of the contextual questions that you've identified that I didn't anticipate, and I apologize. Old Harriman is largely the hillside agricultural general plan. Now, you may not recall, but when the Planning Commission had recommended the general plan update to the council a couple of years ago, one of the things that the council ended up doing is that they wanted to simplify the land use table. We had a finer grain like land use typology, and so there were some of these districts that were kind of like mashed together, and this was one of them. The hillside agricultural, it just became kind of like the large lot, kind of master plan. Neighborhood one is not as intensive as neighborhood two. So it is the next step. So you're gonna go from this hillside agricultural to neighborhood one, kind of in the gradient of land use intensity. So there's nothing in between those two.
So neighborhood one allows them to get the lots that they're looking at.
Yes.
And it still allows the.
Essentially, I think where this is at, and this is kind of being couched as a friendly amendment. The amendment is not saying, look, as a city, we really are trying to preserve areas that are large lots and have a realistic opportunity for true agricultural uses. And a quick brush at our existing inventory of land uses in the city, this seems to qualify. But thinking about those kinds of uses, either a true commercial agricultural property or somebody who has a lot of, large animal rights associated with it, you would probably typically think of that as being maybe adjacent to maybe other open space or other, like a potential urban farm, or maybe an existing trail network that if you're a horse owner, you can easily get to, potentially without having to put your animals into a horse trailer. So it just kind of seemed like with the existing neighborhood 1 designation across the street to the east, and the fact that Sky Ranch developed with this same type of development pattern under the A110 zone, it just seemed like, well, maybe this is a bubble that maybe doesn't quite fit the context for preserving those large lots. It just feels like maybe this is one place where it's maybe not the right location for that. But that, again, that's just a matter of perspective, right? It's a policy call. The city has a lot of discretion, again, when it comes to these general plan designations and amendments.
So if we say agricultural hillside, it doesn't allow them to subdivide? Is that the?
Right.
Okay, so
Right.
that's the issue.
You have to do larger lots
So we'd have
under
to
the
do that
existing
much, okay.
designation.
But if we can go
right.
to neighborhood 1, they can get that number of lots.
How far down could they go with neighborhood 1, though? How small could they get? Maybe that's the question. I think that's kind of what
I
you're
was
getting
gonna
at. We
actually
don't
say,
want it to
If
get,
we kind of ditch I know this is a general plan discussion, but if we were talking about a zoning, right? Because that's more, I think, what we're trying to understand is, to me, I am confused why this couldn't be under being, I know we're saying hillside. I'm pulling that word out because to me, we're talking about agricultural, not the hillside.
Yeah.
Because to me, if it's in hillside, it's kind of lumped in. But if you just call it agriculture, go ahead.
But that was that combination.
Right.
The hillside and the ag got squished together when the council approved the general plan. So you'll see this hillside agricultural designation in other areas where we do have steep slopes.
Gotcha. And that makes sense there, but here and opposite of the street doesn't, right? I mean, we all would agree that
Yeah.
that's
Still
agricultural.
agricultural.
But it's agricultural, so that's where, to me, it almost seems like as long as we keep it in agricultural, it could be rezoned even being in agricultural
So
to a,
that,
Well,
to a,
could we get it small enough?
to a,
Get the lots.
could get like maybe like somewhere between an A110 and an A143. Like, is there another zone that would fit? And that's why I'm wondering, does the general plan really have to be amended? Or is it an interpretation that since this isn't in Hillside clearly, it doesn't really apply to Hillside? That's more what I'm trying to say. And it just
So-
applies to ag part.
the current general plan, that agriculture in Hillside will allow for A143, but if they would like to do a zone that is smaller than that, they have to change it into neighborhood 1, and they are interested in doing A110 to provide those 4 small lots that you saw in the subdivision.
Gotcha.
So they are still interested in keeping that agricultural designation, and if someone wants to change that in the future, they will have to come back here and go through this process again. So they are still trying to keep it agricultural, just in order to provide a range of lot sizes, they have to go to neighborhood 1 to do A110.
So my question is, I understand now that council is the one that combined this, which made this. Are we gonna have the exact same problem with everything that's labeled A143 on the opposite side of the street?
if they want to go smaller.
Because I think that would be logical, and we all know it's not a hillside.
So again, on the east, they already have the neighborhood 1 designation.
So that's why you're recommending going this way.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Then-
this is
then that
the
makes
only
sense.
area around, or I mean, the only lot. It's
Well,
surrounded by.
Or developed, right? I mean,
Sure, but I mean, it's, yeah,
yeah.
that has this, yeah, so, okay.
Okay, well, that makes sense then.
Any other thoughts, questions, comments? All right, again, this is recommendation to city council.
I move to recommend item 5.2 to city council approval.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Adam and a second by Jackson. We'll call for a vote with Forrest.
Yes.
Adam.
Yes.
Jackson.
Yes.
Heather?
Yes.
Daryl.
Yes.
Andrea.
Yes.
All right, that is moving forward. I don't know if there's another discussion you wanted to have, or do we just go ahead and move on to item 5.3? It looks like Lauren wants to, go ahead. Give us some more input.
I just wanted to add a couple things now that we're talking about the rezone.
Yes.
All right, so as we're looking here at this property, the interest is A110 to accommodate for those 4 smaller lots. And we believe this rezone is a good idea because it provides kind of a medium density. It's a mix of different size properties, and between the A110 going into the A143, having a couple of mostly 1 acre and ½ acre lots in that area can help it still not seem crazy dense like Sky Ranch is, but also use a little bit more of the land than the A143 is allowing.
And crazy dense is relative when you're looking at Sky Ranch too. So,
All right.
thank you. Thank you for that clarification. All right, was there any questions, I guess, from the applicant or city staff? Because this is also up for public hearing, so if there's no questions, I'll go ahead. Again, this is for consideration of a rezone from A143 to A110 for this this piece of property. So we'll go ahead and open up the public hearing at this time for any comments. And as mentioned, we did receive a comment online. Everybody had that opportunity to review that up here on the stand as well. And that will be a part of the public record as well. I'm assuming the applicant, I don't know if you saw the comment or not, but that will be made available to you as well.
Is it a long statement or?
No, it's not a long statement. It was an email from an adjacent neighbor.
I'll send it to you.
On this. But yeah, we can get that to you as well, so you're aware of the comment that is made. But okay, seeing no other comments, I'll go ahead and entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
We have a motion by Adam. Second by Heather. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Any discussion? Or sorry, public hearing is now closed. Any discussion from Planning Commission?
How many houses could we fit on this property?
A110, we'll ask that of them. But just by the zoning, if this.
By zoning, not by what you
zoning,
want.
yeah, not by what they would plan, but if we change this zone, what would be allowed on 5.3 acres?
So we still currently have that 1.8 density cap.
Okay.
So we're looking at roughly 10 properties, depending on where the road and everything would
And they have 9.
Yeah.
So they
they're at
could go one,
1.6.
they could maybe get one more if they didn't want it and they sold it and their dream home, but that's not their plan. But if
And
something
once this-
happened and we had this zone
Tied to the
change.
land, unfortunately, not to you. so.
Yeah, exactly.
And once the city actually starts approving a site plan, you know, things like turnaround and stuff, especially at that dead end road, you know, that's going to be a factor.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
And, I don't know.
Okay.
I can see why we did ZCs in the past, is what I'm going to say.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I just know that with the houses to the west of this lot, we required them to be a certain size. We made them larger. I don't know if you guys
Yes, I
recall.
remember that conversation.
To kind of align with that area. So I would like to see something similar where, you know, they're not tiny lots that back that west side.
So that'd be a zoning condition on top of that then. So that gets
Well,
back
but
to that conversation we had originally with 5.1.
Yeah, but if you
Which I actually
remember-
think this makes sense.
Yeah, this makes sense, and I think the reason we asked of those lots to be a little bit larger was because of the
Yeah.
adjacent zoning and whatnot. Now it's kind of in reverse. They got them there, we're gonna have something similar coming in. And those,
Yeah.
excuse me, yeah, you're right, the west side.
That's why we did the bigger ones.
Because it was buffering
'Cause it was
against that.
buffering
But there
yes.
was bigger lots. I mean, you can see they're still bigger.
They're still
even on-
half acre.
They're
Yeah,
still,
but these would be half acre too. Or no, are they?
They're third acre,
30.
is what they're showing,
not necessarily.
Oh, okay.
They'd be close.
yeah.
Yeah,
One or
One-
two would maybe get
Yeah,
there.
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
And that's where I just,
It's the same thing, buffering. Like, I remember when we talked about these ones here and how this is buffering because it's going to be ag. And these are going to be huge lots, are going to stay huge lots. Well, they're not now. We just changed it.
Well, no, but this,
So-
again, I think we're getting confused. It was the ones on the west
Sorry,
side.
we
No, we did
did
both.
say
West
it was-
We did
I guess
east
my point
and
is
west.
this, is that, you know,
I remember that on.
we're
Yeah,
kind
we
of,
did.
we're kind of just being willy-nilly. We're not,
I take exception to that comment, willy-nilly.
I agree that it may feel like that, but at the same time, we're also trying to not make people feel like they have to move out of their ag land
right.
either.
But
So
I mean,
it's-
like 5.1 was right next to a commercial zone. And you're trying to tell me that that has to be a buffer to an ag? I mean, I just see a little bit of hypocrisy in this. just a little bit. So,
No, I think it's in line with what we've done in the past. It's, you know,
I think they're similar.
I'm struggling
I think they're
'cause it-
similar size, the west versus, the east
Yeah.
Sky Ranches versus the west.
yeah, I was gonna say, those Sky Ranch lots, those are not.
yes, but they're
those are
not the
probably
same size as
quarter
the
acre.
Their corner lot was
143s
gonna be
that are
1
across the
acre.
street.
Yeah, this one's gonna be an acre.
Well, we've
Again,
already
but we
told
can't-
the master plan that it's coming.
Right, we can't,
Stuff on the other side will
we
be
can't base
coming
it
that
on,
way.
we can't base it on the plan development that we saw, because
Yeah.
you know, that's not what we're
Yeah.
seeing. That could change.
That could change.
That's independent of what we're looking at here. So we can't really go by what they're saying. I get what you're
Yeah.
pointing out, but my thoughts are, you've got the lots right there adjacent to the west that are roughly, I mean, they're, you know, quarter acre or so, because
And
they
to
are the
avoid-
smaller lots there,
Yeah.
so.
And to avoid what Forrest is proposing, that's why, that we may feel like a hypocrisy. I almost wonder if we do need to do a zoning condition to try and use this as a buffer. That's why typically.
That's not what I was saying. Let me be clear.
Yeah, and
No, but I'm wondering if that would make sense, to cap it at 9.
I think that this is the direction that we should be going and not where we went for 5.1. That's what I'm trying to say, is that I think that this is a good direction. Harriman is no longer a horse town. I'm sorry. It isn't. It was at one time, but
No,
it's no longer.
There's still pockets.
There are still pockets. I'm
And this is
Especially
one
in
of
this
those
area.
But this is
This-
not, that is not the overall character of Harriman. And
Agreed.
hasn't been for quite a few years.
I completely agree with you, but I think we're trying to protect pockets. Like if we were gonna be discussing down around Mountain View, I absolutely agree. We're never gonna get horse park property there.
Right, right.
This
But right
area.
across the street,
Is horse property.
those 1 acre lots going down
Yeah.
the private lane there, I don't foresee, maybe, but I don't foresee that becoming completely switched. I think maybe a buffer, maybe you're getting half that size. And that's where I still am struggling with 110 completely, just a full flat out 110.
You'd rather have like a 9-lot limit?
I'm just wondering about.
So right now, we have a
I'm trying
9-lot
to
limit.
say, somewhere I wish, and this is just maybe we just don't have a great tool that I can see right now. And
just gonna pull
enlighten me.
this. I'm just
I'd like a
gonna pull this
buffer
in
tool.
I'm just going to pull this in a little different direction. I mean, if we're talking about, you know, being a little concerned that the lots could be a little too small on 3rd acres in this area, I mean, this is going to be a connection between Olympia Hills and 134th.
Correct.
I mean, so frankly, quarter acre buffers would be more than enough between that and the neighborhoods behind them and in that area.
So I agree with you, but the reason why I'm kind of hesitant is because when they go through the subdivision application, the full subdivision, they're gonna lose a lot of property
Yes.
in the vacation of the road. And so that's where they may not know that, I hope they do, but maybe they will. The staff has already told them that, but I'm just saying, that's gonna lose a lot of that density, and therefore, lose a lot of that property, and therefore make it possible need to have more density than they were originally planning, is what I'm gonna say.
Well, I guess that goes back to my original question
And that's
to
where I'm
Lauren.
kinda
What was the, with a 5.3 acre, let's just reiterate that, 5.3 acres with an A110, how many lots can you fit?
It's 9.5, and so actually we can't, yeah, it would be 9.
It would be 9 anyway.
So then we're good.
Okay.
Density-wise.
Correct.
So essentially, having approved the general plan, or recommended approval of the general plan amendment,
Yeah.
in theory, your options would be, if you're following the general plan amendment, should it be an A110? Should it be an A121?
That's kind of what I'm.
Half acre? Or you could do an A110 with a zoning condition?
That's what we're getting
You
at.
know,
But I think that's why I wanted to ask the question, A110, if it was that, we could only have 9 lots anyway, and you wanted to put a condition of 9
Then I'm
anyway.
fine.
So I guess that's my point. Let's go with the recommendation,
The
leave it
A110.
there, you're gonna get the 9 anyway, you can't do
that's what
anything more.
That works.
I'm good.
Okay. I can't make a motion, no.
I move to make a motion to recommend approval of 5.3 to city council.
All right, we have a motion by Adam,
I'll second.
second by Heather. Call for a vote. Andrea?
Yes.
Daryl?
Yes.
Heather?
Yes.
Jackson?
Yes.
Adam?
Yes.
Forrest?
Yes.
All right. That moves forward as a recommendation to city council. Thank you for being here.
I think it's really cool.
Yeah, nice work. Appreciate you being here. Okay, we'll move on to item 5.4, which is a consideration of a request to amend the South Hills Master Development Agreement. This is not up for a public hearing. So I'm not sure who is presenting this today.
Yes, it is.
It is up for a public hearing? Is that what I'm hearing? I don't see that on my agenda. The agenda doesn't say it, but it is for a public hearing. Okay.
Yeah, I apologize.
All right. No, that's fine. I just,
Yeah.
I was a little surprised by that too, because I'm assuming that's why most people are here. 5.4, go ahead,
Yeah,
Michael.
and I'll just provide just a little bit of context. Really, the applicant's development team is here to answer your questions. So a master development agreement, as you know, is a little bit different in that it is a contract negotiated land use agreement between the city as represented by the city council and the property owner as represented by a development partnership or developer who is identified as the master developer. The courts have determined that when we use a master development tool to essentially modify what would typically be allowed within the base zone, it's akin to a rezone. And so therefore, when you're doing a zoning amendment, as you know, we do a public hearing process, we do noticing, and you make a recommendation to city council. But that again is more based on established kind of rule of law. And this is also an existing agreement, as we know. This is an amendment to an existing agreement where the developer is exercising the right or an opportunity to expand the boundaries of this existing agreement, and then identifying some textual amendments in addition to updating some of the exhibits. So one of the key kind of guiding documents that we have in this agreement is that as the project is developed over time, as we consider rezones or as we consider kind of the general layout of the project, it's supposed to implement the East Area General Plan. Now, this predates my time, but in simplified form, essentially there was property that had been previously part of Bluffdale City. Those property owners had sought a de-annexation where they went through a legal process to remove property from Bluffdale, and there was an agreement to annex that property into Harriman. Well, that property, Harriman did not have a general plan for. Obviously, it was not in our city limits. And so in addition to whatever general plan was existing at the time of that de-annexation and this property came into the city in partnership with the property owner, the developer, hired a consultant who put together the East Area General Plan. Now, again, the general plan is more than just this map. In your exhibits, we included everything on this project, and I know that was a lot of pages of information, but really it was just there more for information. But you have the actual general plan text that enumerates a number of policies that the city is trying to achieve with this development agreement. And this is just one, right? Just the map is just kind of like a simplified exhibit of that East Area General Plan. Now, we currently don't, we're not using the East Area General Plan. We have our new Harriman Next General Plan update that was adopted a year ago. But this East Area General Plan was adopted as an exhibit to the MDA. And so it still is the governing general plan for this MDA. So as you're looking at the proposal, as everybody's looking at this proposal, we're really trying to see, okay, are we implementing the MDA, including this future land use map, as well as all of those policies and objectives that's in the general plan itself. And again, it should be noted, this is a bubble diagram. We kind of have soft edges. Things have changed over time, like where we thought at one time where we'd have major intersections on Mountain View Corridor, which was yet to be essentially established. This was all before that. So some things have changed. So this is really kind of a bubble diagram, as evident by how it's rendered in that image. This approved PUD, this is the original PUD for the project. This was essentially the land use plan for this project. Apologize that it's a little bit grainy, but you can see we're identifying pods and densities and even some land use types. So over time, this has been amended officially 4 times. This is the current land use plan for South Hills MDA. And this last one, which was not one of the numbered amendments. We had the first amendment, second, third, fourth, which I know that the applicant's materials kind of summarize what happened in each one of those. This was really kind of like a technical cleanup for pods 35 and 39. This is Academy Village, a commercial property. And as you recall, that in pod 35, where we have that brown corner, that's where we have Academy Terrace that is under construction right now, where essentially the city agreed to shift a bunch of dwelling units that would otherwise potentially be spread out through a mixed-use project in pods 35 and 39. We decided to agree to concentrate all of those into that Academy Terrace project. And so this was just a cleanup of the map itself. No other text amendment was done, and thereby the city and the developer agreed not to call it an amendment per se. It didn't have a numbered amendment. Otherwise, this would have been the 5th Amendment, and tonight we would have been talking about the 6th. But this is the current land use plan that is essentially being amended by the proposal. So again, this is the proposal. And the expansion, the areas that are really being expanded is the kind of the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. This area that is largely owned by Staker, which they've been working on grading for future development for quite some time. So most of the acreage of the amendment is in that area. And then there's a little tiny triangle piece, part of pod 17 that was a part of the UDOT right-of-way. It was a little remnant piece. It's not even an acre that the developer acquired from UDOT recently. So they now control that, and they're trying to add those 2 pieces into their amended land use plan. And then along with that, again, trying to look at the bubble plan of the general plan of the East Harriman plan. They're trying to refine, okay, exactly where are the open spaces? Where are these different units of density that we're trying to spend? Again, for the record, the average density for the whole project is maximum 4.5 units per acre. And the development team is demonstrating that their intent is to essentially develop less than that at a lower density, but they do have the right to exercise up to 4.5 units per acre. This was a simplified table that I know that our Community Development Director, Blake Thomas, was asking for as an exhibit, just to help give you an idea of the actual acreage and units that the master developer is currently intending within these pods. And then consequently, there's also a proposal to update the open space and trail map as an exhibit of the MDA. One of the things that we've been doing, and this is kind of still a very high-level review, Clint really has been doing the work on this, is just broadly, how consistent is this land use plan with the overall, that original East Harriman general plan? And this bottom right-hand corner, this summary of proposed changes, you can see overall where we're seeing increases in some land use types and where we're seeing decreases. We believe, on the staff level, we believe that when it comes to the impact of the density can't exceed 4.5, that even though some of these pods are going into different places than were anticipated by the East Harriman plan,
that it is essentially a wash. But this is a lot to review. It's a lot to take in. Again, this was a very high-level review, but you can see that there are changes to the strict application of the original land use plan compared to what is before you tonight.
Hey, Mike.
Yes.
Am I understanding that the new piece is down on this graphic on the bottom, and it's showing that it's part of the total number of decrease? How is that the case?
I can't remember the exact details of this, Clayton. You're the one who did all of the
That makes
GIS
sense.
analysis.
I don't know if I
but-
did, I'm
Yeah.
asking that well, but
So are you asking about the black areas?
no, I'm asking about down on the new piece that they're proposing, the Staker 2 pieces of land that would come in. It's included, it looks like, in the total of summary with proposed changes as a general decrease.
So the amount of low-density residential is decreasing. How much low density you're getting on the project is decreasing, and I think that was,
I was just curious what the
Yeah.
number was excluding the new addition. That's what I'm trying to say.
we did not run that calculation.
Because to me, yes, it is
Yeah.
decreasing, but you also increase the square
Right.
footage,
Yeah.
so, yeah, of course it's gonna decrease.
And this, again, was kind of that blunt
Curious.
first,
Yeah.
high-level review, so.
Just trying to understand that graphic, I
Yeah.
apologize.
Yeah. So with this said, again, we know that this is a lot to take in, but your opportunity tonight is to conduct the public hearing, identify any additional amendments if you are prepared to do that as a commission, or, if there are any amendments to the proposal, you can make a motion to approve as submitted, approve with additional recommendations or amendments to the council to consider. Although the commission may recommend a denial, as we've mentioned, there are certain rights associated with the MDA that the developer is exercising, and even a denial from this body still forwards to the council for consideration in context of those larger agreements that the city has made within the MDA. You can also continue the proposal. Hopefully, if you're identifying, if you're choosing to table or continue this, we would like to have direction. Maybe there's just simply more information, like more, help me understand this part of the project, or I need more time to research all this information that we've dumped on you. But again, the applicant's team will be able to answer some of those maybe finer grained questions that you might have.
Okay. Go ahead. Yeah, I was going to just ask that.
Can you go back one page?
Yes.
Since you brought it up, what does all the black mean? Clint, you had mentioned that what does all the black mean?
So the black areas are just where the proposed land uses do not coincide with the adopted East Area General Plan.
With the adopted, as in, from 1 year ago.
Gotcha.
It also, and I didn't mention this earlier, and I know the commission had a work session starting at 5 o'clock where we did a field trip. So this group has been working very closely with DAI, who hosted our work session at 5 o'clock. And some of these parcels, like Pod 5 in this map, is actually part of the project that you just saw. So we're probably gonna see further amendments to this, assuming that this other project that we've been reviewing moves forward and has an agreement. So we're gonna have overlapping agreements, which of course we don't want. So they're definitely intertwined, those two projects.
Can you approximate where the current city water tank is off of, like just on one of these maps? I'm trying to find it. Is that the zone 2 water tank?
And I think the project engineer can identify that. Obviously, this is identifying future water tanks to serve the project.
That's where I
right?
thought. I just wanted to make sure.
But yeah, they can talk about
Thank you.
existing infrastructure.
Any other questions for Michael?
I know it's a lot to take in. One other thing, just to be clear, this bottom line, this red line, Camp Williams owns property within city limits, so don't confuse that red line with the city boundary. This is not right at the edge of the city boundary. There is more property within the city to the south of that Camp Williams line.
so we can fit in
Okay.
that golf course.
Along the same line, Michael, have those lower pods, pod 20, 13, 12, have they gone through the required review with Camp Williams?
So this application was actually submitted before that new law went into effect. However, we did do, as part of this public hearing process, they were included in the notification. Also, just for a point of reference, Wendy Thomas, our Assistant City Manager, who is still here, she has been working with Camp Williams in establishing what is that process going to look like. Because of her involvement with the camp, we've kind of identified that there is some potential amendments that the state legislature is likely to entertain in 2024. The language just isn't very clear, specifically about what is meant by, is it land use change? And the language almost seems to imply subdivision. But you and I know that when we think about land use change, we're thinking about general plans, zones, master development agreements. So we did not implement that more formal review process for those reasons. It predates the actual going into effect of that new law. There was some ambiguity of maybe what that law really means, and the process of the review has not been officially established yet, but we have been working on that with Camp Williams.
But the pod 20 property is new to this addendum, correct?
Yeah, pod 20 and this little triangle in pod 17. Yeah. But you will see, I mean, you'll see some pods have definitely gone up in density compared to the adopted general plan, or even compared between the two, the current land use plan and the proposal. So there's definitely changes here.
More land, changes in density. Okay.
I don't envy your role in trying to take all this in. But thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions for Michael? All right. Thank you. Yeah, we'll continue to provide an opportunity for the applicant. I don't know if the applicant is here. Would like to provide some additional information for us.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for letting us stand before you today, Commissioners. We appreciate the opportunity. Hey, Michael, if I'm not mistaken, one of the things that we talked about in our meeting was whatever it is that we adopt for the land use master plan, we can clean up the zoning aspect of it that you just spoke of with the commissioners on an administrative level, right?
No, if we're going to fold in the zoning amendment with this application, that's where we said we needed to back up and add it to this process, which we certainly can do.
Okay.
Yeah.
So here, having heard that, could that potentially create a situation here where we're going to have to table it if we have something that you've brought up that we need to potentially take care of, or can it be done retroactively?
We can certainly do the zoning amendment as a second step. And your team has already been researching this issue as to what are the right zone types for this development plan.
Correct.
And we started that, and I apologize, you made your team available to have that conversation this week, and then the doctors said no. I did not have that conversation, but we have started working on what is the zoning component that goes along with this general plan. This team believes that it all works, but we just haven't completed that exercise yet.
Okay.
So,
and I would say that if you've read through the amendment, you'll notice that obviously the hot button is the one that Mike has brought up to you earlier. Some of the other ones really are a lot of sort of technical cleanup and definitional cleanup, so that we have some continuity in between what the general plan says, what our MDA says, so on and so forth. So if one of them is notice party, a change of notice party. So some of these are kind of administrative. So having heard that and knowing that what we're looking for and what I'm sure you're mostly interested is the addition of the Staker property, I'd love to field any questions that you may have, and Reed and I will do our best to answer them. I will say before you get to that point, one of the reasons why we are adding the land, we're asking to add the Staker property in is because when the water tanks were moved from the Rosecrest or the property, which is controlled by the Sorensen Foundation, it violated some contractual language that we have with Staker in terms of our mining agreement. So there is some lost revenue that they're going to have to incur because now the water tanks sit on property that they cannot mine. So as sort of I hate to use this term, but kind of a horse trading deal in trying to save them a significant amount of time and money, trying to go out and get their own MDA when they do get ready to develop in roughly 10 years. We came to an agreement that we would at least make an attempt to put their property in our MDA so they didn't have to go through that process when the time comes in exchange for the amount of lost revenue that they're going to have to incur because they can't, again, mine underneath the property that the tanks will now sit. So hopefully that provides a little bit of context for you that you may not have known. And having said that, I'd love to entertain any questions. As you can see, our overall density, at least in the upper South Hills portion of it, when you look at this land use table, can I wander a little bit?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Everything above this master or large portion of the table has already been completed. So you see the RSL stuff, you see what's going on in Solely Lost, which is another apartment complex that we developed. So everything above that area where you see the units reported as 1274, that's already been accounted for, as has pod 35 and 39. So really the only thing changing on this master table is that center large section of the spreadsheet. If that's helpful.
Yep.
You know that we're entitled to 4.5 units per acre in our MDA. When you look at the density that we're looking at doing for that center section or the upper South Hills portion, everything south of Mountain View Quarter, we're actually at about 2.6. So in terms of the overall density, we're considerably lower. Now, one of the things that Mike brought up is we still want to, we are entitled for 4.5 throughout the entire development, and the lump, our land use master plan at the very bottom, accounts for everything. It essentially tabulates the entire table. So with the 4.5 units, we still want to be entitled to that. I can't negotiate against ourselves. But given the topography, given our history in Harriman, given everything that we want to do in this planned unit community, doesn't really lend itself well to trying to put 4.5 units per acre on that mountain. So that's why you see that number go down to about 2.6, and hopefully that is a mitigating factor in whatever your decision is here tonight.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant tonight? Okay. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
All right. Correction to the agenda. This is open for a public hearing. So with that, I will go ahead and open up the public hearing at this time for item 5.4. Please come forward, state your name, and provide any comment.
My name's Walter Plum. I office with the Gardner Company and the One Center on the 20th floor of the One Center downtown Salt Lake City. We've had extensive development experiences with Wasatch. We're greatly in favor of this project. I'm here representing tonight WPA, which has about 60 acres contiguous to their property. I think we recently granted a sewer easement for one portion of this. And so I just wanted to come here and say we support this development and the quality experiences that we've always had with Wasatch.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're saving your comments for the public hearing?
Well, if that's okay, we wanted to just mention a couple things.
Well, we can close the public hearing if you like, and then we'll still give you that opportunity.
Either
as well.
way, whichever is more appropriate.
Maybe we ought to wait for any other public comments,
Okay.
and we'll go ahead and
Okay.
let you come forward. So, yeah. Anyone else like to provide any public comment at this time? All right, with that, I'll go ahead and entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Adam and a second by Heather. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, public hearing is now closed. Go ahead and provide any more context,
So
please.
I was glad that Walt mentioned that. He does own acreage just to the east of our project. And over a long period of time, we have redesigned backbone roadways and all of the utilities that go in those backbone roads to stub certain roadways to that property. And then we've also done the same thing for other adjoining property owners. And so that's one of the reasons for amendment number 5 to the MDA is to accommodate those infrastructure changes, including the 2 water tanks and other major backbone infrastructure that the city is using, not just for our project, but for all of the other properties that adjoin our project. And so that made the pods and the configuration of the pods also need to be adjusted. So when the configuration of the infrastructure and then the configuration of the pods all changed, the owner of this basically reevaluated and said, we shouldn't have such high-density pods and such low-density pods. Let's have still a variety of product, but not such extremes in the high and low areas. And so this basically is just redistributing the same amount of units that you saw that we're entitled to now with amendment number 4, and then essentially adding that 118 acres consistent with the rest. So to simplify things, the infrastructure got adjusted, the pods got adjusted, the density got redistributed to be less extreme, and then the 118 acres got added to be consistent with the rest. So that's a simplification of this whole amendment.
Correct, Reed, but the 100, it's hard for me to read it. I'm trying to zoom in, even on my phone, I can't see it. Just the new land, the 118 acres, added 500 and...
No.
109.
Correct.
Is what I'm reading. 109 in pod 20.
On that little purple note, I'm looking at the purple note that says new area, because it would add it to the entire density. So you're gonna have 118 times 4.5. So it would give a total, I can't read that number.
533 units.
So what I'm trying to say, thank you.
Well, that's what one...
Yes, 533. So what I'm saying, for me, where the confusion is that true? Just want to understand that. That's my question for you.
To the overall, yes, that's true.
Okay, that's what I needed to do. Thank you.
But on that particular acreage, 118 acres, the plan right now shows 119 units.
But was any of that 533 distributed in other pods?
Yes.
That's the
Well,
question.
it's included in the
Included.
overall total of the whole project, so yes.
Yes.
So it is providing opportunities for additional density in the other...
Push down into other...
Into the other parts of the pod.
So I just wanted a clarification on that. No,
So
I get it now.
any property in the entire development comes in with 4.5 units to the acre to the whole development, yes.
Sure.
So
Any acreage.
So between the 2 new amendments, we're adding 533 and 4 units for the UDOT property. Right? The little triangle?
Well,
Whatever that is, 537?
Yeah, it's like 0.5 acres?
Yeah, but at 4.5, it's still 4 units.
4 units.
4
4
units.
units plus the 533.
So 537 total is what we're adding.
Adding.
Now, yes, I get that you're putting a lighter density in that 20 acres. You're
Correct.
also gaining a lot of open space. I get that. I was just curious.
No, that's exactly right.
Perfect.
Okay. Any other questions?
Not for you, no. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. All right.
So,
Yes.
so the reason why I brought that up is I feel like we're just creating more density down the hill by adding the 118 acres.
Right.
Because I get that we're only getting, and it's hard, and I would love a little more information to show me exactly what the density and acreage and units of the new space is pulled out of that table. And I would like to see the table before the Amendment 5.
Oh,
For a comparison. And I tried to look, and maybe it's in 500 pages, I didn't find it. Apologize if I didn't.
318.
I think
It is.
that's similar to one of the issues.
1,284 is what was
And
in
again, I
there
want to talk
before.
to staff for a bit.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk to the developer.
But I think that's kind of similar to one of the issues I put in the staff report, is just, they have this 4.5, but
Correct.
there is this requirement within the agreement that when all of the like zones are added up, you still can't exceed that base zone density.
overall.
Correct.
And they started that exercise. They've been working through what does that zoning really look like with that, stipulation.
And that's why.
And so I think that's kind of what you're saying is,
Before we add,
yeah.
what I'm trying to say is, and I appreciate them trying to add land, and I'm not trying to dismiss that,
Yeah.
but if I negate that they're trying to do that, and we just said what we have now, and we said, yes, thank you for your service of giving us 4.5 units per acre before this development agreement, pull out that new 537 units, and let's have a new discussion on a new agreement, brand-new development agreement for that property. I'm trying to see what the benefit to the city is, because really what we're doing is we're pushing the density down the hill, where maybe we could have a new discussion on the 118 and the 0.74. But the problem is I don't have enough information for me to say that I do see a benefit, because I'd love to see the comparison table. And did you say we have an exact table? Because I've
It's
seen.
close, yeah.
I want to see this table with it removed, not even a close. I want to see this table
286, page 286.
with the 118 and even the 0.85 acres removed. See that number. Then another table with just the new acreage. But what I'm saying is even in these, they keep moving the density. That's where I'm getting confused. Because
So on this one, there's 1,284 units.
This amendment 4.
Yeah, this is Amendment 4, 1,284 units in 278 acres, which is 4.6.
So that's where I'm confused.
Yeah.
With the numbers.
I know
Yeah,
that
how could
Blake
it
and
be-
Clint both have been on earlier iterations. Again, we've been meeting with this group for a
Totally
while.
agree, totally
right?
agree.
And there's been, just little changes over time. Initially, we thought we would have a more detailed, every pod, you could clearly see exactly what those changes were. We weren't able to mature that as an exhibit for you tonight.
Yeah.
But, in general, again, it does appear that they're, staying within the larger parameters of the agreement.
Correct.
But yeah, we don't have that fine grain analysis, about is it being spent in the areas according to the East Area General Plan? Is it in the, because again, that was a bubble plan.
Yeah.
So there is some interpretation as to what is the right place for those levels of density.
But
They've
even
looked at it from an engineering point of view, like how do they construct it, also from a marketing point of view. But yeah, I apologize that we just don't have that kind of fine grain analysis.
And that's where I'm having, and I'm not expecting that I understand it's a lot of detail trying to compare it, but even when I compare it with 4, I'm still struggling to see how we added 533 more units total across the whole thing. And the number of total units only went a little bit up. There just seems like I'm missing some numbers. That's why, before I would like to make a motion, that's why I think we need to
We need more
we need
information.
get a little more information. So I want to be clear what Adam Jacobson is looking for. I don't want to speak for anyone else. I would love to see addendum number 5 as it is, and addendum number 5 without the new addition, so that we can see exactly, compare what we're seeing, the differences. Because that's where I'm getting lost in the moving of density around. And maybe it's comparing the bubble charts a little bit better, or showing these graphics side by side. But it seems like there's movement in everything so much that it's really hard for me, in my simple mind, to
And
understand.
we're even relabeling sometimes pods, right? What used to be this pod number,
Right.
now we've changed the pod number.
Correct.
So it gets a little bit confusing when you're trying to compare what it was to
How am I
what it's
supposed to compare
going
that?
to.
I was just doing that.
Because you can't just rely on the pod numbers alone.
Yeah, so before I'm comfortable with that, I think I need a little more information. Again, just one voice, but I would like to see we're adding a considerable amount of lots. We're adding a considerable amount of land and a considerable amount of
Well,
units
from what
and a
I'm seeing.
4.5 density that we've had concerns with for a while, and I just want to make sure before we go through that I'm comfortable with it.
I mean, I think you're suggesting you want to make a careful recommendation, understanding that the development team is really exercising a right that they have.
And totally
within the
understand that,
current
right?
agreement,
But before
right?
before I'm comfortable making a recommendation, I'd like a little more information.
So maybe just real quick, as I'm looking at this information, and this is in appendix, what is this? Appendix F, which is the South Hills Land Use Master Plan update of 2022, just last year. It shows a total of 1,284 units remaining in this same middle section that we're talking about. That's what was previously. This would then bump it up to 1,472, so almost 200, just under 200
But it also has
additional yachts. But this is saying they could go up to 533.
But the other part that confuses me is in the same thing, it says on recorded pods, it has a higher number than what the addendum number 5 has as a recorded pod.
That's a very good point.
So that's where I'm trying to say, it seems like there's some confusion in the numbers. And
Yeah,
I just want to make sure our staff has had time to completely vet that through and that they agree that the numbers do make sense, because I see it odd that we had 1,471 approved a long time ago, done pods.
Completed.
And now we are saying
Now
we
we're
have
dropped down to
1,274.
1,274.
And we actually added in the RSL land. So that's where I'm,
I got you now.
you see what I'm saying? It just, even the recorded plats, and maybe it's recorded pods,
discrepancy there.
I'm just not seeing it link up as simply even on the recorded numbers.
Yeah.
And so I'd just like to make sure before we get to that bottom line, we're truly looking at that. And I know we've done this on many other development agreements. On truly, we did this on Anthem, if everybody remembers. We're pausing for a minute till we see a true number for the next phase and the next phase. And so before we amend it, I would hate to not understand those units of where we're at right now.
Yeah.
So that's just me. I don't know how y'all.
Okay, any other thoughts? Discussion points? Anyone else? Concerns, want to see? I mean, as you mentioned, this is a lot of information. We just saw it in our packet. There was not a work meeting or anything associated with it, so it is quite a bit of information coming at us. So.
And I apologize. There was a joint meeting, I think, where we talked about this again at a fairly high level. But
Okay, maybe I missed that one.
I did not remember that, but the applicant reminded me of that.
Okay.
I think we talked that it was going to be coming in, but I think I remember actually saying, let's see the numbers in the tables, actually. I think I.
And I
said
missed
that.
the
I may
last.
have actually said that.
Was that just in the last joint meeting? Because I missed that one at the
Wasn't
end of
there that
September.
one. I wasn't at that one. It was a while ago.
It was a while ago.
It was a
Okay.
long time ago, but I remember,
Okay.
let's see the tables.
Yeah, and we haven't seen
And I
those.
know council was kind of in the same kind of boat, so.
Yeah.
So, that's why, I mean, that's just how I feel. I don't know how you all feel. I haven't heard anybody else.
Anyone else? Any comments? Agree, disagree?
Yep.
Agree? Daryl, anything you want to bring up?
I'm just trying to
Give others,
digest
I want to give
it all.
others the opportunity to talk too.
So the developer is showing 1,472 units, right?
Yes, that's what this is showing now.
That's with the 500.
To still be recorded. Final plat's not yet recorded.
That's, yeah, I'm a little confused too. That's with the 533
Yeah.
additional? No.
Well, yes, because that's pod 20 that is being added. If you look on the screen. Pod 20 is showing 109. But it is confusing because the recorded units is different here than what was on the previous one as well. So,
It's like in the middle.
Oh, it's that weird.
yeah, pod 20 is different now, but in the new pod 20.
It's on
which
the
is
new land.
Yeah, the new pod 20 is,
20 and 21 were 22 and 19 now.
yeah,
That region, yeah.
yeah.
And the other part that I was looking at, even if you look at just, go up to the final plats new, just on, for example, just one of the pods, pod 2, it said.
303.
RSL was a different color, so I apologize. I did
So-
say
so
RSL wasn't
Adam-
in there, didn't catch the color. But the number 2, it actually has even a number different than the recorded units. So
Yes.
If you go to number 2, I think in this one it says.
And 2 says 277, this one says 303.
And 2, on the one I'm looking
Recorded
at Jackson, it
units.
says 195. And then here it
Oh,
says 277.
you got it, yeah.
So I'm just saying, it just seems like there's a lot of different numbers. And Reed looks like he wants to talk.
I know, and I'm wondering if I give him the opportunity or not.
So the pods have changed also.
But I mean, Reed, I know you probably have the numbers, but to me, I just
We
want to
can't-
see it. So
Yeah.
and I trust what you're going to say, but I actually want to see it myself, and I'm not seeing it.
Yeah. Reed, I'll give you just a couple minutes. Go ahead.
So yeah, you should listen to what we say, but you should even more so see what we produce. So if you need a chart that's different where we remove the 118, or if you need clarification on why do we show 1274 here and the 277, what happened on pod 2, there were some places where there were allotted areas that were set aside for the soccer complex that later got sold to the to develop instead of being part of the soccer complex. And then those lots got platted out. And so we went back, we corrected the number when things like that happened.
Gotcha.
So the thing I really wanted to draw your attention to is the column that you're looking at with the 1472 number. That column is called a unit distribution estimate.
Okay.
So if you'll notice at the very bottom, you can see the overall dwelling units per acre at the very bottom right. It says 4.5 because we're preserving that entitlement. But if you look at the number left of that, it talks about the unassigned units. There's almost 300 units that will not get used according to the estimate that we're providing here.
Can you run that exact same thing without the 118 acres?
Yep.
And the 4 units?
Yep. But just understand that our client is not using all of its density.
I'll get it.
The 4.5 is not assigned.
Yeah, we get that.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, we understand
Totally
that.
understand. You guys are doing awesome. Thanks for doing a less density.
Yeah.
I get that. But before we look at adding it, I want to see where the numbers really are going. I feel like we have a lot of moving pieces, and it's a huge development, and I get you guys can sell and trade and do different things over time. I'm not saying you can't. It just feels like we've lost our accounting, and I'd like to make sure our accounting catches back up before we make more additions.
10-4. So any table, any format or any.
Just something
remove it
that
or
we
add
can
it.
show a really good comparison by what you have now versus what you're proposing.
Happy to do it.
I mean, even if you renumbered the pod, try and keep closer to the original pod numbers. And
Yes.
so if it's a new pod,
So you can
don't
compare
call it
apples-
20, is
Compare
what I'm going to
apples
say.
apples. Even if you have a new pod number, this is what is previously
Some way
numbered
to
this
make
or
it
whatever, so.
Dumb enough
To
for
compare.
Adam Jacobson can
Easy to
understand.
compare. 10-4.
Yeah, thank you.
That's what I'm struggling with right now. I think the intent makes sense, but I just don't know
Yeah.
enough to say yes or no because of that.
I'm good with the 2.6, if that's really what's happening. Because I'm confused how we could, this was showing 4.6. And how did we add all that and drop
down.
it so drastically? Yeah.
I'm confused as well.
I'm confused.
So with that, I'd like to make a motion.
All right, go ahead.
To continue without date, item 5.4, until we get accurate tables to show a before and an after with the intention of adding this space.
Motion by Adam.
I'll second.
Oh, I'll give it to Forrest. We'll have a second by Forrest. It was close, but I'll give it to him. We'll go ahead and call for a vote at this time. Forrest?
Yes.
Adam?
Yes.
Jackson?
Yes.
Heather?
Yes.
Darrell?
Yes.
And Andrea?
Yes.
All right, that item will continue. I do not know, we probably do not need to have another public hearing, though, on this item, or would we? I don't
We're
think we
not
would.
obligated to, just
Okay.
one public hearing.
Perfect.
Oh, yeah.
I'll leave that to your discretion then.
And we'll
So-
try and also have more of that zoning analysis.
Yeah.
I think will also be very helpful that they've been working on.
Yeah, no, that would be great.
Little GIS reference.
Okay, very good. Any comments from any member of the commission?
I would have maybe liked to see that in a work meeting. I think that would have been helpful to kind of go through some of that.
Could have had some dialogue
Yeah,
prior to the.
that would have been good.
Detailed, I think. I mean, I think we went over it generally.
Yeah.
But a true detail of where it moves and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
and this group I know loves to have that kind of format for a conversation with the commission and council.
Yeah. Nice, thank you. Any other comments?
I would like to have one related to the buffering discussion. Just briefly, I think we need a better tool, because I heard what Forrest said, but I actually think we're not. By having buffers, those are a good thing. And I do think, I could see how it could look like we are favoring one versus the other, and I would like to figure out a way to make it not look like that. Because to me, we have better tools now. Like in the old days related to 5.1, you could get, there was no way to not just get 2.7 units per acre. And now we've made it so you have to start at 1.8 and earn it. So I get that, but I still think we have to worry a little bit about buffering between zones logically. And I feel like we need to come up with the right solution that we're not always having to do, and maybe those are zoning conditions to try and enhance that, or maybe it's something. But I worry over time. I mean, Robin Shakespeare sat here and she didn't say anything. Ironically, her property was two pieces away, and she was the one that put the zoning condition on, and she was the longest planning commissioner that's ever been in Harriman. And that's my part that I think is funny, is this zoning condition kind of sticks with it, and it does stay with those, especially zoning conditions, because to me, those probably may not change over time. And so that's where maybe that is the right tool, but I'd like staff to kind of think about what makes the right tool for a buffering.
If I may, this actually, a couple of the applications that were on for amendment tonight, the zoning amendment with the ZC, and also Lawrence, the general plan and the zoning. So now we're looking at the actual general plan to help us kind of make recommendations to you in the city council. And it was interesting because I think the general plan update did some really important things that we needed it to do, but it still maintained kind of a big picture policy. And we had a hard time finding more of those very specific policies. Like, for example, if you really believe that it's good practice to have certain buffering standards and where those should be, we should express those in like the general plan or somewhere.
Did something like that.
I remember doing that with the didn't we do that in the old town? I swear we talked about it.
Yeah, it's not. Or like having this more nuanced understanding of where really should we be preserving large law agriculture. I think from a practical point of view, your recommendation to the city council was in line with what we saw. Like when you're analyzing that real land use at that location, it doesn't really seem to make sense. But the bigger picture of what the commission and the council was trying to achieve is let's preserve true large law agricultural uses. That makes sense. But I think I could see us potentially as a commission and going back through ourselves and doing some finer grain amendments to that general plan to help express those public policies that you believe is in the best interest of the city. We need that kind of language as we work with potential developers or property owners on these amendments. And then it also supports, the process legislatively.
While you were talking, Mike, I was actually thinking our current ag land, originally, if you think about it, when Harriman was created, right? Old Harriman was the density and ag land was the hills. It almost seems like to me now, the ag land is Old Harriman. And the rest is, because it's becoming master planned and it's becoming density. And so that's where I do think we almost need to figure out what do we want to do to protect that original Harriman feel in those locations, and to Forrest's point, still allow for other locations that aren't the Harriman feel as much. And that's why, we changed our logo and we're trying to stay up to speed on new things, right? I get that, but we still need to preserve where ag land's going to stay for the most part. Like Old Harriman, it doesn't have sidewalks. So yes, it's probably going to stay ag land until we figure that out. And we honestly, even the city knows we don't want it to develop too much because we don't have a road infrastructure that can handle much more from a drainage perspective and things like that, right? So I think protecting those areas, and that's where that one, I remember it being argued whether it was in Old Harriman or not, where tonight's issue was for 5.2 and 5.3. But I find it interesting, we almost stuck it up on the hillside, and it's totally not. And I get we would never want horses on a hillside anymore, but we probably want them on a nice flat area like where Old Harriman is. So it's just trying to figure out the right buffer and language, so I just wanted to bring that up.
I think one thing that's hard is the nuance behind that, though.
Correct.
Because what we're saying, like, you know, to Forrest's point of the 5.2 and 5.3, that would be the definition of that ag land wanting to preserve. But then when you take a more nuanced perspective to what I was saying, that's a connector between what's going to be a very major development and a very major road. It doesn't make sense. No one's going to want a horse right there. No one's going to want horse property right there, right? Versus, for example, item 5.1, tucked away, there's really no connection to those main roads unless you have to go down and around. It makes maybe a little more sense. So it's really hard to put a policy into place when there's so much nuance and critical thinking that has to take place in that process.
And that's where maybe what I'm trying to say, I agree with you completely. Maybe we need to focus on where do we really want to keep our ag land? And that's where we start to enhance the buffers and protect it. Back in the old days, I remember when I used to be part of staff, it was, yeah, along 7300, we're going to put a protector and a buffer there, right? But now that's where a lot higher density is. So it's changed, and I think there will always be change, but we need to keep protecting what makes sense for Harriman.
And maybe
There's another tool that we've not explored, at least I don't believe we've done one of these, but other cities will create small area master plans that's focused. And it's actually a layered plan. So you still have your broad citywide general plan, but then you augment that with a specific small area plan.
Correct.
You know, so if you know that there's an area where maybe we need a fine-grained kind of solution, we could just focus on that rather than like
almost
the
like a
entire
historic
citywide
district or
plan.
something like that.
And I think that's the case because a lot of the old Harriman, like right above where Destiny used to live, on 5700 West, that will never become a public street unless someone goes and buys 40 different lots. And they're all 1 acres or plus, so it's not gonna develop. I know we all think it will, but the probability of someone to go dropping down and knocking down 7 or 8 houses to make 20 is probably not likely, even in today's environment, or developers would already been doing it. And so but to protect that, they're gonna stay ag land because they already are ag land. That's what they're gonna sell, that's what people are gonna move into. So we should protect those areas and do some of what you're saying, little mini master plan areas.
So my question is even more basic than all this. Tonight, an issue came up that Adam had personal knowledge of from years past. Where's that documented? How do we even know if it wasn't for Adam's history here? How would we even know there was a buffer there?
Zoning condition.
That's what I'm trying to say. That's why we put a zoning.
I like what you were saying about the
I did not read the
map.
entire minutes, but I think you had minutes from the meeting as an exhibit in your
Yes.
attachment.
Yeah, but the other
Sheldon
issue
did a
is-
lot of work on researching the history of that, and I apologize if we felt like we didn't disclose enough, but I thought we had.
But you're right, it's not a formal designation to be a buffer between A and B. And I think that's what Mike was getting at, was there's not a formal
I
declaration
like
of
the
it.
idea of documenting it.
Right.
I mean, Heather had some personal knowledge, you had some personal knowledge. If you two weren't here, how would we even know? So, yeah, document.
Well, and our position, which was obviously different than your recommendation, was we were really trying to look at what does the general plan say?
And that's where I think, we
Yeah,
kind of saw
so-
that in 5.2 and 5.3 is the general plan almost forgot about ag. Moderate ag is what I'll call moderate ag. They focused on hillside. They were worried about wasn't what was developed, not what is developed. And that's where we're going to have the next cycle is balancing what is already developed and going to develop more, to Forrest's point, and what we want that to look like. So I don't know that we have to solve it now, but it was just something I think we
Yeah,
need to
I
figure
think
out.
we should have this conversation, though. Like, what is the public policy that you think we achieved by potentially denying that zoning condition? You're saying we need to preserve the buffer. So anyway, I think it would be a good conversation to understand.
I think it's just establishing essentially opinion. a majority opinion on what you want to see the character of Harriman be, because neither one of Adam's or Forrest's opinion on 5.1, for example, was wrong.
Correct.
Neither one's wrong. It's just what's your vision of Harriman, and then can we codify that in a majority agreement? If there's no majority agreement, you're not going to be a way to codify it. If we can all agree or mostly agree on a certain character that we want to see, like, oh no, we want to preserve these horse property potentials, or no, we believe in infill, you know? That's the discussion that needs to take place.
You know, and if you guys look, I mean, if you think back to like West Jordan, I mean, they one time had a Butterfield-like park. They used to be horses. They used to have all of that, right? And then because they lost that tradition, guess what? They don't have horses. It's a nice big giant Silent Lake County Library now, right? Like, and so that's where I think we and council need to really start thinking of the vision of not just protect against master plan developers. What is the future? We are, after this DII stuff we talked about today, we're going to start running out of new land, which is going to start shifting the interest to current land. And that's where like things like the number of units of how many people park on their property with RVs, that's why I think that stuff is important, because we're heading down that road. So I think stuff like this would be a good discussion.
This is kind of something that came up a couple meetings ago. It was when we were looking at the Olympia subdivision. We had someone that has a pretty big lot, and one thing that we overlooked was a buffer. And he's gonna have like 3 backyard neighbors to his one lot. So just considering things like that is something that's important to me. Cool.
Good discussion. Any other comments?
Yes, you all are awesome. It is such a pleasure to work with you all.
Thank you, Michael. We feel the same about city staff. You guys are doing great.
Point out, we had 2 items we agreed on today. He seconded me on one, and he said, I agree. Baby steps, baby steps.
Wow.
We had our first split decision. There you go.
I know, I had to break a tie. That's the first time in how long have I been on this? 5.5 years I've been here? All right, future meetings. The next city council meeting has been canceled. So we will be meeting as a planning commission in 2 weeks on November 1st. Motion to adjourn.
Yep.
Who said that? Oh, Forrest. I have a motion by Forrest. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.